Alright YouTube, welcome to part 9 of my huge RC trophy truck build. Last time I was showing you what I've been doing to mount the front suspension. I'm on the back end now, just to give you an idea of what's been happening. If you remember with the diff, let me get hold of the camera and I can give you a close up. The diff had a threaded and a keyway cut in the end of the axle there. So what I had to do was convert the go-kart hubs that I had to take the key, obviously, to fix it. These are front go-kart hubs with the bearings taken out. So what I've done, I got an insert, a sleeve put in and welded into the existing hub, and then obviously ground down with the keyway in so that I could actually get a fixed point on the axle and the drive from the diff. So with a key in, I don't know if you can make that out. It's a nice fit, it's snug, but it'll drive well, you know what I mean? There, it's just slid on into place, and just with a fixing bolt at the end, that'll do just the job. So I've had one done on either side. You can see there, you've probably seen the swing arms before. Again, they're waiting to get the seam welding done on them, get them finished off. They're still looking rather rough, but I'm sure we'll be able to turn them round. You can see there as well the exhaust clamps that I've been using to hold the spherical bearing. I've spaced it a little. There's hardly any slack in it at all. There's no giving it there. But yeah, I'll have to change the spacers and the shims that I've used. They were just to fill a gap basically, just so I could set it up, see how it looks, and do what work I needed to set up the trigonometry of the actual back axle and the swing arms. I've not sorted the drive for that rear diff out yet, but obviously that's, you can see there, let me just get a bit more, you can see there how it'll sit, that sort of angle for the drive. Originally I was going to do a lay shaft hanging out the back end with everything on, the disc for the brake and obviously the drive, but I managed to find a right angle gearbox out of a mini quad, another Chinese wonder. I don't know if you can make it out in there. Yeah, there's the drive face, splined 14mm shaft with splines obviously, and then that converts to a drive out the bottom there. I don't know, can you make that out? I wonder if I can. Oh yeah, there it is. So that drive then will be shaft driven to the diff, which is kind of in keeping with the style of truck, and obviously it'll be the best way to keep a constant. I put a CV joint in, get a bit of movement out of it, it should be fine, it should be able to handle it. The diff's in, and I needed a mount for the other side, so what I've made is this kind of box section part out of some 4mm, 5mm steel plate that I had. It was another shelving bracket that got chopped up, but I've got a pretty good finish on it. It's all seamed up. I've put a recess in there to hold a flat bearing, which will obviously carry the shaft. I'll just get that so you can see. That's the flange bearing that I've got with a 12mm hole. This axle, petrol scooters in the UK, really good site. It was £6, and it's a reverse shaft for the same sort of mini quad that the gearbox came out of. Now I've used this to space between the gearbox and the flange bearing that I've got on the other side to obviously make a stable drive point for the chain that will run from the cog there, obviously there. I was hoping to use the splines as well to put a disc on, and then have the brake caliper actually slowing the axle down rather than trying to deal with the back end diff or even putting brakes on each hubs, which is something I don't need to do at the rear. So this sits nicely in the flange bearing, which obviously it's got a couple of grub screws to tighten it down. Now my spacing, if you can make out there at the bottom of the gearbox, there's a flat plate that I put in to obviously support the face of the gearbox, if you like, because it should be bolted to an engine casing, which it hasn't got. So I've got a threaded insert at the bottom in silver there, if you can make it out, which obviously allows me to bolt the gearbox to it. And I've done the same at the top. Just move that pipe at the top of the mount there to allow me to bolt into the top of the gearbox straight through there. So I've got two good fixing points there, but because of that plate I wanted to make the most of the stability that it'll bring. So the difference in the shaft is about 5mm. I could do with it being 5mm smaller to stop it binding on the bearing side, and obviously to fit properly. So by getting this shoulder cut down on the shaft by 5mm, so it carries on the 12mm inner, it's just 5mm longer, that will give me great clearance sat in that bearing, and therefore I can still use that plate as a support basically for the gearbox. Although it shouldn't have much lateral movement, if you like. Once the drive's on the shaft and the chain's running straight through to the splines, it's just going to be pulling. It's going to be pulling, and it'll pull against the flange bearing that's sat on the other side of this plate, which obviously will be welded into the chassis for strength. I've used that plate as well to fit the petrol pump. You can probably make it out there. It just gives me a nice central point from the tank, and that'll feed up to the carb. I'll just mop the pipes up there, but my T's in the top there now. And then there's a filter on that end which will run under the tank, which obviously is waiting to come back on there. Once that tank's in, I can get a proper setup on the pipe work. Worst welding in the world there. There's a close-up for you, how not to do it. I've put the battery box in the back. This is it's from Germany, but good price, gel battery. Came with a charging lead as well, which I can obviously use to charge the car rather than trying to hook things up and mess with the wiring system. Now I've done the exhaust. You can probably make out this big white whale of a thing. Well, I bound it up. After I pieced it together, it was a proper Blatter exhaust that I cut up into about 9 pieces. You can see it under there to get it through the chassis and to get it where I wanted, and how it had to sit, because obviously they don't make exhaust for cars like this, so it was a case of just make do and get it as best I could. Now after 3 sessions of welding, it came out really well. I could have had it powder coated. I could even have, with a bit more work, had it chromed. But because of the proximity to everything, obviously the battery, the running gear, and just the general, it's tucked away, but I thought the heat wrap would be a good move. So I'm going to see how it goes. If I have no problems with the exhaust blowing, which obviously after 3 passes with a welding gun I don't think I will have, then I might look at getting it powder coated or even chromed again, as it was chrome when I got it. But you can see there how it sits with the rear pipe, the rear can at the back. I've still got a bit of movement in it. I've put a bracket on this end, but I've not put springs on the other end to hold it up to the manifold yet. So once that's in, I'll maybe stick a little bend in that bracket there, just to give to get rid of that movement and to get the pipe sitting. If you can see there, we got it sitting parallel to the chassis rails underneath. Right, I think that's probably enough for today. The music stopped anyway. Right, thanks for viewing. Tell your friends, and I'll put part 10 on soon. Alright, peace.